is lined up for you. You can also call in. Our numbers will be up momentarily, much later. Not really momentarily, but much later in the course of the program as well. So as I've said, trust has long been considered a powerful trait that enable leaders to succeed. I see it all myself. I see it all the time. People who trust their leaders are willing to follow them. They're more willing to engage their duties, make strong efforts to benefit their organization, prize the quality of work, and feel like their efforts have value. Conversely, a leader who is not trusted can never overcome large inevitable pitfalls. Trust is essential to leadership, I must say. Well, a truism indeed. But how trustworthy are we? Is there a way to find out? And can trust be measured? Those are questions we endeavor to answer today. And of course, you just had a snippet as well from Mike Eldon to talk about trust. I'm eagerly waiting to see our panelists joining us, and we continue with the conversation apace. Right now, I just will also just show you what we have in the dailies this morning. I'm trying to tinker with it here on my laptop, since also if it will not really succeed, then I will just use the hard copies just to show you what we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. And this is, I don't know if my director Diana has it also. She can tell me also that we can beam it for you as well. This is the Daily Nation today. Let me just show you the hard copy. Wanted spy queen on the run. That is what we have as the splash today. That is what we have. Wanted spy queen on the run. Fallout. Not your ordinary woman. Jen Wawira Mugu cuts the image of a sophisticated private investigator and entrepreneur with interests in security consultancy. Until recently, you could hire her services to spy, track, and catch a cheating partner. But in a typical case of a hunter becoming the hunted, police are now seeking her over a series of crimes, including armed robbery and impersonation. And this story continues on page 4 of the Daily Nation. Then even just root out for me that I can have it here. Just beam out. Right. We have suspected life complaint at KNCHR with explosive accusation against detectives. That is what we have there. I have a soft copy on my laptop. I cannot see it there. We shall just beam it out for you as well just momentarily. Also, foreigners barred from adopting Kenyan children. That is a story that you want to follow there on page 5 of the Daily Nation today. We have the soft copy. And the story continues on page 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. Foreigners barred from adopting Kenyan children is what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation as well. Also, Ruto and Waiguru face off over Uhuru's succession. Ruto and Waiguru face off over Uhuru's succession. DP says Mr. Kenyatta's election was based on competence and not tribe, dismissing claim by Kirinyaga governor, who is now a Raila ally. And the story continues on page 6 of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, border crash deaths on the rise. Border crash deaths on the rise. That is what we have. Also, as a sidebar story, lawlessness and drink driving still the major causes of road accidents. Latest report shows. Another sidebar story there of the Daily Nation this morning. Also, University Guide, what every fresher should know, right? That is what we have there on your Pullout magazine, the network. University Guide, what every fresher should know. That is another story that you can follow also on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. Let's try and see also what we have on the front page of the Standard and the Star. Gone in just 10 minutes. How gunmen stole 42 million shillings. Gone in just 10 minutes. How gunmen stole 42 million shillings. Daring robbery days after men posing as police stole 72 million shillings from a Standard Chartered Bank ATM in the city. 2 gunmen walked away with millions at Moyale airstrip. This story is well covered on page 6 of today's Standard. And you have a chronology of events on Wednesday. At 10:30 a.m., Cessna fixed-wing plane leaves Wilson Airport for Other airstrip Moyale. 1 p.m. plane lands at airstrip, but pilot has to wait as van with armed police escorts had not arrived. At 1:20 p.m., 2 gunmen who cut chain link to gain entry rushed to the plane and at gunpoint order pilot, his assistant and private security officials to surrender cash. And you can read the rest of the details of the chronology there on the front page of the Standard this morning. Gone in just 10 minutes, how gunmen stole 42 million shillings. You remember this is definitely following the highest of the 72 million shillings as well. And also the culprits were although arrested by police. This is still under investigation. Also, Okwastima tops list of most expensive mobile lenders. Okwastima tops list of most expensive lenders. That is another story on top there. Costly affair product which allows distressed electricity consumers to buy units on credit on their prepaid or postpaid connections, charged for 43.4% interest per month. That is another story that you want to follow on page 4 of the Standard today. Also, women's honest gesture wins praise. This is all about rewards. Waitress at Nice Digital Hotel who returned customers 60,000 shillings lands promotion and is overwhelmed by marriage proposal. Waitress at the Nice Digital Hotel who returned customers 60,000 shillings lands promotion and is overwhelmed by marriage proposal. Read all about her story also inside the Standard this morning. The business segment, state warns of fresh brutal measures to reduce expenditure. Treasury CSAs move to help halve the fiscal deficit from the current 7.7% of GDP to 3.5% by 2020. That is another story that you want to follow also inside the Standard. This is how it looks. Right, let's move on and to see what we have on the front page of the Star. And this is what you're waking up to the front page of the Star. Head teachers to lose control of school cash. This is what we have as a splash today. This is shocking to many principals today. It says head teachers to lose control of school cash. CS George Magoha makes radical proposals to the Basic Education Act. Proposal to give education CS power to appoint outside managers of school finances. And you have the story tacked on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. CS George Magoha makes a radical proposal proposals to the Basic Education Act is a flag on top here. Also still on the front page of the Standard of the Star should say, Kenya's potential undone by barons cartels. This is what Israeli envoy Noah Gal Gendla is saying. You can read his story on the big read, page 12 and 13 of the Star this morning. Also still on the front page of the Star. We can see a standalone picture here, and this is Kenyans donating during the blood drive at the Kenya National Archives grounds last Wednesday. Remember, we are seeing a crisis so far as it is right now as far as our blood banks is concerned. And this is a niggling worry, and we can see good Kenyans who are actually now coming to the fore to actually try also and save the situation. Kenyans donate during the blood drive at the Kenya National Archives grounds last Wednesday, saving lives. That is a standalone picture on the front page of the Star this morning. Grandmother sold my newborn girl for 35,000 shillings. This is what a mother is saying. It's all about child trafficking. And of course, you know, right now there is a ban also on adopting children from Kenya by foreigners is a story you can follow on page 3 of The Star. And Deputy Ruto returns to coast barely days after Uhuru's visit. This story continues on page 6 of The Star. It's all about strategy. All 10-year-old girls to start receiving cervical cancer vaccine. This is all about the HPV virus. All 10-year-old girls to start receiving cervical cancer vaccine. This story continues on page 7 of The Star this morning. Let's see what we have on the front page of the People Daily. Kinjuri faces new probe over 1.8 billion shillings payout. This is what we have here. Kinjuri faces a new probe over 1.8 billion shillings payout. Is all under siege. Anti-corruption agency claims Agriculture Minister and PS released cash to Mombasa-based farm without approval from the Strategic Food Reserve Fund. Anti-corruption agency claims Agriculture Minister and PS released cash to Mombasa-based farm without approval from the Strategic Food Reserve Fund. This story continues on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. End of road. That is a probing question there. Asad Bastori, Kinoti orders dreaded city spy arrested. This is controversial. Trimo Security Solutions Director Jen Mugo, who is wanted by police for skipping court. You can follow the story inside the People Daily on page 2 this morning. Also missing Dutch tycoon's wife arraigned on murder charge. This is on page 5 of the People Daily today. Judge orders Sarah Cohen detained at Langata prison pending mental examination as details of husband's death remain unknown. Is a story you can follow inside the People Daily this morning. Let's buckle down to business a bit and see what the Business Daily is holding for us this morning. This is your splash today. Revealed Kenya's most expensive mobile loans credit to buy electricity has annualized interest rates of 150%. Revealed Kenya's most expensive mobile loans. Buying electricity on credit through a Safaricom associate is the most expensive digital mobile lending in ranking by the Bankers Lobby Group, which also reveals that the exorbitant monthly interest charged on other soft loans given through mobile phones. The Kenya Bankers Association study shows that the mobile-based electricity loan, known as Okoa Stima, attracts a monthly interest of 43.4%, making it the most expensive, while Equity Bank's Equitel was ranked the least costly at 2.1% per month. Also, other costly digital lenders are Pesa na Pesa, which charges interest similar to Okoa Stima, Kopa Chapa at 38.8%, Pesa Pata 30.4%, and also Kopa Cash 15.3%. You can follow this story on page 4 where you have all the gritty details inside today's Business Daily. Also, Travel Farm claims it is owner of Ruto City Hotel Land. Travel Farm claims it is owner of Ruto City Hotel Land. Now, a travel agency has defended the ownership of the piece of land on which Nairobi's Western Hotel stands, arguing that the title deed was acquired legally and that the airport's regulator has no claim to the property. In documents filed in court, Priority Limited says the title to the land was obtained in good faith, is legitimate and cannot be faulted through the petition or any other case. And this story continues on page 4. The controversy still on the Western Hotel is continuing. So this is a new revelation. So you can follow all this story on page 4 of the Business Daily this morning. We have also here a standalone picture. And this is the Acting National Treasury Secretary Ukur Yatani and PS State Department of Planning and Statistics, Saitoti Torome, with Parliamentary Budget and Appropriation Committee Chairperson Kimani Shungwa and Planning Principal Secretary Julius Muye during the launch of the budget preparation making process at KICC yesterday. Mr. Yatani warned government agencies to prepare for tough budget cuts in their to prepare for tough cuts in their budgets. This is a story you can follow also inside the Business Daily this morning. Also, ministries face tough budget cuts. I think that is a related picture for this particular story. The Treasury has announced budget cuts on non-essential items like trips, training, and car expenses in an effort to curb borrowing in an economy where taxes are trailing targets. Acting National Treasury CS Ukuri Atani yesterday told ministries and other states agencies to prepare for brutal budget cuts and promised to issue guidelines, including actions to be taken against those who breach the guidelines. You can follow this story on page 4 of the Business Daily as well. On the ticker this morning, bank employees given 6% raise. Employees in the country's banking sector have received a salary increment of 6% backdated to March after the Kenya Bankers Association and Banking, Insurance and Finance Union signed a new collective bargaining agreement. And this story continues on page 8 of the Business Daily this morning. Today's digit here is 2.5 trillion shillings. That is the value of mobile money payments rising by 11.1% to hit 2.5 trillion shillings in the first 7 months of this year. The story continues on page 20 of the Business Daily this morning. Pan-African lender dumps Nairobi for Kampala headquarters. Uganda President Yoweri Museveni has received a deal with African Export-Import Bank, that is Afrexi Bank, to locate its 3 billion shillings regional headquarters in Kampala. You can follow the story on page 6 of the Business Daily this morning. Also, farmers protest influx of cheap Uganda maize. Maize imports from Uganda have helped stabilize flour prices, I should say, ahead of the harvest season. But farmers in the North Rift are up in arms, saying they face losses. That is the story you can follow on page 11 of the Business Daily this morning. Well, from the hard copies, that is what we do have for you this morning. I'm still trying to struggle to see if I can get the soft copy to beam also the editorial cartoons, which I do not have the hard copy. But this is what that has been drawn today by Stano. That is inside the People Daily. Right? Could we just zoom on this so that we can try and see? That is all about referendum and the BBI. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. The eggs are mine. Right? So this is all about the BBI referendum. You know the drill. This is what Stano has drawn inside the People Daily this morning. Let me try and show you also what Gado has drawn for us this morning as well. All right, this is what Gado has drawn for us inside the Standard this morning. And it's all about the great airlift. This is Robert Mugabe, the late. And of course, we know everyone will be turning their focus tomorrow for the burial of the late President Robert Mugabe. And you can see the great airlift is, of course, carrying that particular casket bearing the body of Robert Mugabe. But beside there, we have all this aging of African presidents who are still hanging by the fingernails, you know, onto power. We have Buhari there, we have Biya, who is ailing, we have also Bongo there on a walker, we have also the Yoweri Museveni as well. I'll leave it for you to decipher this. This is what we have inside the Standard this morning. Right, let me try and show you also the dailies across. This is a Citizen, since now I have my screen working here. That is the Citizen in Tanzania, ratifying free trade area agreement now. Right, it is loading slowly. The business community believes that signing the agreement for the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area will broaden markets for Tanzanian products, with TPSF adding that it will continue to provide leadership in all African Continental Free Trade Area processes. The story continues on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. Also, Magufuli swears in New intelligence chief. This is another story on the front page of the Citizen this morning. And it says President Magufuli has appointed and sworn in Mr. Diwani Adhumani as the new head of Tanzania Intelligence and Security Service, replacing Mr. Modestas Kiplimba. Mr. Adhumani was previously the Prevention and Combating of Corruption Bureau Chief. The story continues on page 2 of the Citizen this morning. Right? Oh, that is the soft copy of the Daily Nation today. Also, my laptop is acting up. That is what is on the front page of the Citizen. Let me try and show you also what we have on the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda. Let's see what is headlining the front page of the Daily Monitor. And this is what you're waking up to the front page of the Daily Monitor in Uganda this morning. Police quiz husband over Nagirinya killing. Police quiz husband over Nagirinya killing. The interview is part of police quest to string together information that could lead them to the bottom of the murder case of NGO worker Maria Ngarinya, alongside Ronald Katimbua, a driver she requested to drop her home. You have the story continuing on page 4 of the Daily Monitor this morning. Also, we can head over to Rwanda, where we have the New Times as well, and see what is on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. And this is what you're waking up to on the front page of the New Times. Banks faulted for low cost or low rate of financial inclusion is what we have on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda. Also, we can see here Premier rooting for deeper financial inclusion for women and youth. This is the 2019 AFI Global Policy Forum that was happening in Rwanda. Let me try and zoom in so that I can also get to read the caption here. And we can see Prime Minister, that is Ngirente, delivering his remarks during the 11th Alliance for Financial Inclusion Global Policy Forum 2019. He's saying that the country has recorded significant progress in financial inclusion in recent years, moving from 21% in 2008 to 89% in 2016. Also, UK government papers warn of extreme risks from no-deal Brexit is another story you can follow on page 17 of the New Times in Rwanda. Also, inside Alibaba's undergraduate e-commerce program for Rwandan students. All the details are tucked away on page 20 of the New Times in Rwanda. That is what we have on the front page of the New Times in Rwanda this morning. So you can grab a copy of the New Times as well. This is how it looks. Make sure you grab a copy of the New Times. Bank faulted for low rate of financial inclusion. We want to battle down to a discussion this morning. And of course, we're training our focus on leadership and the trust quotient. Leadership and the trust quotient. We had, of course, at the top of the hour, some snippets from Mike Eldon. And as I said earlier, trust has long been considered a powerful trait that enables leaders to succeed. I see it all the time. People who trust their leaders are willing to follow them. They're more willing to engage their duties, more strong efforts to benefit their organization, prize the quality of their work, and feel like their efforts have value. Conversely, a leader who is not trusted can never overcome large, inevitable pitfalls. Trust is essential to leadership, a truism indeed, I must say. But how trustworthy are we? Is there a way to find out? And can trust be measured? Those are questions we endeavor to answer this morning. And I'm glad to be joined this morning by Mike Eldon, who's the chair of KCA University. Also, he's the founder and the CEO of the depot. We have this morning as well Miriam Mukindia. She's an executive coach. Also do have with us Professor Dominic Mwenja, who is the CEO of Mata Hospital, and also to Fosa Kwakasumba, who is the principal of St. Paul's University. Maybe as introductory remarks from you, we had from Mike Eldon. We can actually hear from Tufosa, also Prof, and Mary Mukindia. When we're talking about trust quotient, the biggest question people are asking, is trust quantifiable? Trophy, do you think we can measure trust?
Good morning.
Do you have a scale? Maybe I should come with you and find out how Trophy is this morning.
The trustometer.
Yeah, trustometer. Yeah,
Trustometer.
I remember there was a passiometer.
Yes.
Is there a passiometer that you can actually try to measure to see how passionate you are, right?
Yeah. I think trust in a way can be measured because it is reflected in our relationships. And as we know, everything we do is based on a relationship. Even with somebody you do not know, you actually have a relationship. It is also very hidden.
Yes.
It is also, in other words, it's not obvious, so it's very subtle, but its impact is so great, and we see it, therefore, in some of the things we do. It's seen even in the laws that we pass. It's seen in the policies that we pass. You know, for example, the reason why we have a biometric system at our doors is not just because it's the in thing. It's a trust issue. And so trust can be measured. And let me also add,
yes,
it is so critical, and it is the thing that holds us together or actually breaks us apart. Yeah.
So trust can be measured according to Trophy. Prof, you think trust can be measured?
It's such an amorphous concept, but yes, I do believe it can be measured because it's about how we feel and judge someone based on several things. And I'll give you a formula for measuring trust. We use credibility, use reliability, and integrity.
Credibility,
reliability and integrity.
Fantastic.
And there are other 8 things that I'll be looking at that define those 3. But when you take credibility, reliability, and integrity, then you divide that by what we call UTU. That's the self-orientation of an individual. What kind of person are you? How do people feel about you? How do you feel about others? Because when you feel you trust somebody, and because trust is earned over time, it's not an event, and it doesn't come with an office. It's a process of people feeling comfortable with you and feeling, I can actually trust this person with my life. The mistake that we made in this country, and we continue to do that, is that we measure leadership in terms of our political leaders. And when we do that, we start having all these distorted and weird ideas about leadership. We should be looking in all sides in corporate leadership and other types of leadership that does not necessarily have this class of individuals who by any chance will score very low in your trust quotient.
Okay.
Credibility, reliability, and integrity. And some people, in terms of integrity, they also call it intimacy. That's how close this person feels to you. So all those things combined, plus a few other things, will be able to tell you how trustworthy is this individual. So it is measurable.
It is measurable. Right. Mary, you think so?
Yes, I definitely think so. I saw a quote, and I can't remember by whom, which says that I do not trust words. I even question actions, but I never doubt patterns. And it really struck me because you can actually know and see a pattern in terms of its continued, I guess the words reliability and so on that you were talking about. It's really predictability.
Okay.
If I'm able to predict the weather, I can trust that I will have a party tomorrow because I know the weather patterns. It's been measured in time. I don't have to have a tent. I can trust that weather pattern because it is consistent, it is regular. So the continuous patterns and the things that people repeat as leaders, you know, in a leadership role, and I tend, whenever I'm coaching, facilitating, I try and tell the younger people that leadership is a role, it's not a person, it's a role that you play. And we play it from the family level, we play it in our individual homes, we play it in our corporate structure. If you're able to have a consistent pattern in the leadership style of that person, then you can say, I trust them because I know. Because leadership is about, it's about communication. What I say happens. So to me, I think so.
All right.
It's a pattern.
It's a pattern.
It's a pattern.
So, Mike, you gave your thoughts at the top of the hour, right? Maybe do you want to maybe tell our viewers who are joining us right now, do you believe that trust can be quantified? Can it be measured? What are your thoughts before now we head over to the lectern and, of course, hear your thoughts as well?
My thought is that what you can measure, and I prefer the word assess for such softer issues, is that you can assess the consequences of trust or its absence. And I'll be talking about what these consequences are either way, because they are very measurable indeed.
All right, okay. So yes, we want just to hear from our panelists this morning. The topic that we are using this morning is leadership and the trust quotient. You get to drive the show with me. You can hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is our Twitter handle. AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. I don't know, Mike, we should begin with you because yeah, you came in a bit early, and Mike is walking over now to the lectern. He is the chair of the depot. Also, Mike, he is the chair of KCA University, and the subject we're using this morning, as I've mentioned, is leadership and the trust quotient. Mike, you know the drill, so I don't have to go through, the regular.
You've brought back the big mic.
Yes.
Yes, it's back. Right, good to see you. Mike, you've got
Good
5
morning.
minutes.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I was very pleased to have this topic selected because I think guys like us, it's at the center of what we talk about and help people develop. Earlier on, Debarl, you and I were talking about this challenge of trust in a society like Kenya's, and whether no one trusts anyone. And when you posed this to me, I reacted by saying that we have healthy subcultures in Kenya. And I think, Professor, here, you almost identified the subcultures broadly between political leaders. Where are politicians trusted? I don't think in America. I don't think in Britain these days. And if not there, then where? But in the private sector, it's not that everyone's trustworthy. We have a whole spectrum. But everyone has a reputation earned either way because, as Mary put it, of patterns. That you build or erode credibility about being trustworthy. As far as the assessment of it, this wonderful book, The Speed of Trust, by Stephen Covey, the original Stephen Covey's son, it's the whole thesis of his book where he tells us that we shouldn't think of trust as a soft thing. It's actually a very hard economic issue, and that you can make a business case for the benefits of trust. There's an economics of trust. And you just look at the global trend, a lot of it following on from the 2008 financial crisis that resulted from deeply untrustworthy corporates, the Enrons and whatnot. So we started getting more and more compliance legislation and regulation. More and more and more and more. Each organization now is almost buried in the need to comply, and whether it's to do with procurement or recruitment or anything, it's got to a point where, in order to overcome previous abuses, we keep introducing more and more compliance requirements that in turn slow everything down measurably. So that when we look at procurement, when we look at the length of contracts and the lawyers we need to retain and pay, these are the costs of lack of trust. They're the cost of lack of trust all over the world, including here in Kenya. Of course, technology that brings transparency and accountability speeds this up usually. But when compliance is too much focused on putting ticks in boxes, it too often, very often, and very irritatingly, precludes performance. Because you're slowing things down, because you're becoming bureaucratic, because you evade the possibility of innovation and excellence. So, as I say, we do have healthy subcultures here. I exist almost exclusively in a number of them. And we see the benefits. Part of being in such subcultures is that you know when to say no, as we've discussed on previous occasions on these Friday mornings, to tempting short-term gains that others would say yes to. Paying speed money, a contrast to the speed of trust, the speed of enabling things to happen with untrustworthy people. Or you can trust them to pay you or to give you a contract if you dish out something. But if you have too little trust, as many organizations even in the private sector do, and you have controls everywhere and you're looking for everyone beating the system, then you're actually increasing the chances of them beating the system, because they will resent you. They will be disengaged. They will be in their little silos. They'll be afraid to make decisions. And so the challenge for leaders is to go beyond trusting everyone. Of course, that's ridiculous. That's being gullible. But to be smart about who you trust and not assume that everyone is untrustworthy. I think when you are able to build a reputation as a leader and to attract trustworthy people to you, which many are in this country, then you can go far. And people do go far because customers, suppliers, other stakeholders are attracted to them because of their trustworthiness. And they don't have to be the cheapest. The challenge in free societies like Kenya's is that the media so assumes that its role is to expose untrustworthy people that it's too easy to lead to an expectation just by reading the media that no one is trustworthy, because it's like exception reporting. They only pick out those who are untrustworthy, which is a good job, but it has this consequence that because you only read about untrustworthy people or allegedly untrustworthy people, it can lead you to conclude that no one is trustworthy. Of course, in politics, people do get together and collaborate. We have coalitions. We have people linking up for common interests. But as they say in politics, there are no permanent friends, only permanent interests. And so here, particularly our political parties are not people who trust each other and stay together because of common ideology, but it's because of common short-term interest, which is also why it's rare for a political party to exist beyond the electoral cycle. The relationship that's particularly important in a society, in any organization, in a family, in a country, is the relationship between trust and happiness. Because the more trusting people are with each other, studies have shown, and people devote their lives to this, studies have shown that they are happier. Because you're more relaxed. You can enjoy relationships. You don't waste energy. You don't exist cynically, skeptically in your silos. And so we have to think of ourselves as leaders who are trustworthy and who generate trust, who look down and where people behave like the crabs in a jar who pull each other down as soon as one tries to raise up, who defy the approach of PhD, pull him down, or as often as not, we hear women pulling each other down. And we have to raise each other up when we are trustworthy, when the pattern shows that we have earned the right to be trustworthy, and build higher trust societies. We have role models in this country we need to spread them, maybe even in the political sector.
Thank you, Mike. Right, Mike there. And he's asking you this morning, how smart are you, or how smart are you about who you trust? So we need to be smart about who we trust as well. And he talked about the economy of trust, right? We shall also try and decipher that with him much later in the course of the program. The relationship between trust and happiness, they're intertwined. So if you trust, also happiness just comes to the fore naturally. We want to hear it right now from Mary Mukindia as well, just to give us also her view on the trust quotient issue and leadership. How trustworthy are you, right? Can people trust you with finances, with dockets? We want to hear from her this morning as well. Very good 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Kenyans. I first thought, let me just remind ourselves, because I always say, what does the word mean? Go back and look at it and say, what does the word mean? And when I Googled it, it really said that trust is a firm belief in the reliability, truth, or ability of someone or something. So it is the firm belief in the reliability or truth about something. And then I asked myself, why is it important? And I think it's important, and even as Mike said, it's because it's the basis around which all human relationships are built. If there is no trust, then you have all the other things that go along with it. There's anger, there's fear, lack of communication. All human relationships, from the relationship of my mother and child, from my family, from a church, they're all based on relationships. And one of the things as a leadership coach, even as trainer, that we talk about is that leadership happens between people. And leadership is all about relationships. So that is why it's important, because trust is the whole basis of that. Then I asked myself, who is responsible for it? And interesting enough, it is the leader. The leader is responsible for developing that relationship. The leadership, and the leader is a person who should extend that trust first. And it's the responsibility of the leader to have the character to build the environment around him or her that will nurture that trust. So I then asked myself, how do you then build that relationship? And it's very basic and yet so difficult. And I guess that's why human relationships are so difficult, whether in a leader and a subordinate relationship, in a politician and his electorate, between family, between husband and wife, between friends, is that there has to be open and effective communication. So easy, yet so difficult. And the very basis of it, of building it, is that open and effective communication and leading by example, being transparent. And that is how all of us as individuals are leaders in our own right should be nurturing and developing that trust through relationship. So what are my views about it? And the more I have lived in all my many number of years, I've really come to understand, and yet it's very difficult in our African social concept or structure or culture, is that truly to have this thing, you need to be vulnerable. Vulnerability is the very first step to which you can then start building an open, communicative, transparent relationship. But it's so difficult, particularly for older people, for the boss, for what we call the leader, to be vulnerable. And yet, you know, only when you're vulnerable and you're open can people actually relate with you, see you're transparent, see that you care, see that you see what Professor called the utu. You can then have empathy and people can relate with you and you can touch them. And that's a challenge, I think, for all of us, particularly those in leadership roles, to stop having the position, wearing leadership as a position, and understand that leadership is a role. Don't wear the title. It is not the seat. It is not the title that is on top. I don't know why people have to have this label on front of the desk that says Managing Director, Permanent Secretary, Cabinet Secretary. You wonder, don't you know who you are? It is the role that you play. And the role that you play is a relationship and how to influence people, engage people, and it comes from being vulnerable. What a challenge for us in Africa. as the fastest growing economy, as the people of 2030 who will be the biggest mass consuming market, to say, how do we become vulnerable and relate even with the very young people who are the engine, who understand the digital world, to be vulnerable enough to say, even you have a leadership role to understand digital. I am about influencing and organizing the resources. How do we work together? I think that's a challenge, Debarl and my fellow panelists, for us to ponder on and say, how vulnerable are we every day, even as parents? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary there. So how vulnerable are we? And of course, that is the beginning of trust when we open up, or to other people, and we don't fear that we shall be assumed to be weak, right? That's when actually we try to build or lay down the building blocks of trust. So leadership, or you as a leader, you're responsible for developing trust. And how then can we build trust? We shall also be looking at this. She's spoken on some of the ways we can actually try and build trust, one of which is open and effective communication. Right now we have Professor Dominic Mwenja, who is the CEO of Mater Hospital, and is on the lectern right now also to give us his side of the trust quotient and leadership. Professor,
Thank you, Debarl, and good morning, Kenyans, and good morning to those in the US that are watching. I've been getting a lot of messages, especially good morning to my daughter, who is in the university in Kentucky. She's watching, and she liked Mike's comments. Very good. Now, for me, when you talk about trust, it's a combination of things that we have to understand about the individuals that you deal with. And this combination of things, and because it doesn't happen at once, it's a cumulative, all these things that you observe an individual until you get to that point of saying, now, I trust this person. But there are two types of trusts before I list the other things. There's what we call the cognitive trust. And cognitive trust is how confident you feel in the leader's technical ability to do what that person is trying to do. Mm-hmm. Once you start there, then you bring all these other inputs of how you trust an individual. There is also what I call the affective trust. And this is known as the trust of the heart. I don't know whether you've ever met somebody and somebody just opens the personality. I think Prof said that. And you're sort of like, you know what? I don't know this person, but somehow I trust this person. You know, that's a thing of the... so that's the trust of the heart. But sometimes we have to understand that as much as it takes to build trust, it also takes a very short time to destroy trust. And that's why the accumulation of a longer period of time is extremely important. And we usually say, you may have all the attributes of a good leader, but unless you earn the trust of the people that you're leading, you will not be successful. And there are several things that people look at when they're looking at successful leaders. First of all, let me give you the quotient of trust. Mm-hmm. As I said, it's credibility, reliability, and integrity. And some people use intimacy and all that. When you take all that and you divide that by what I call utu, that is the you that is in you that defines your relationship with others. That is your self-orientation. Are you a selfish person? Are you a person who will go out of your way for others? When you do that and they see you're credible, you're reliable, and you have integrity, then your trust level increases as well. But there are some things that you need to look at in totality that allows you to have this full picture of the trust you have in a leader. One is clarity. When I'm dealing with this person, is there clarity on what they're trying to tell me? And is it clear what the objectives are? Is it clear? Otherwise, people trust leaders that have clarity. They distrust leaders that have ambiguity. And we know ambiguity creates opportunities for structural weaknesses to do the things we normally would not do when everything is clear. The other one is compassion. Are you compassionate? Do you show compassion to others? Do others feel as if you actually do care about them? That's extremely important. Then the other one is character. How would others characterize you as a leader or as an individual? Then the other one is the contribution. And contribution here Do people see the outcomes of what you do and what you're doing and what you intend to do and what you have done as a leader, as an individual? The other one is connection. Are you able to build those relationships with people such that people can actually connect with you? You know, I don't know if you've ever talked to a leader and that person talks for just 5 minutes. And like, you know what? I can connect with this person. I feel you. I cannot connect with you at that level, that human level, establishing those genuine connections with an individual. Then commitment is extremely important. And we know that commitment builds trust. When people know you're committed to achieving and to doing what you say you're going to do, they will trust you as a leader. Then the other one is consistency, and my sister talks about consistency. If you see a leader who is not consistent, they're saying one thing today and they're saying another tomorrow. I've been in meetings with some of our leaders where in closed doors, we all agree on the things that needs to be discussed. But then once they step in front of that mic, and not this mic, but this mic, and the television station, the television cameras are all over the place, what they talked about inside is totally different what they're going to talk about outside. Now, can you trust such a person? They're inconsistent in how they handle the truth. Then the other one is competence. If you have a leader who is competent and they're able to do what they promise they're going to do and you're comfortable with their ability to get things done, then that starts to develop trust. Mm-hmm. Now, the gap between what a leader says and what a leader does is at the heart of trust. What they say, what they do, and their actions is the heart of the trust. I always tell to my management team and the team that I work with at Mata that leadership is not about a zero-sum game. One doesn't have to lose in order for the other one to gain. You have to trust each other such that you don't have to worry about turning your back because you know your brother and your sister has your back. They don't have a dagger behind you. And as I complete, Debarl, we know in leadership, as trust declines, leaders tend to grab power and they use the office in order to make sure they enforce trust, which they have not earned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Prof. And of course, he's given us some of these attributes that we need to look at. Clarity. How clear are you in what you are communicating, right? Compassion, right? Do you have that noble character? Contribution, connection, commitment, consistency. These are pivotal elements in building trust as well. And we want to take a short break on that note. I can see we have already a trophy on the lectern. We shall hear from her on the other side of the break as well. And I can see also your tweets here. I shall read one or two as also we circle back from the break as well. Trust quotient is what we're discussing about. Don't go away.
Now you can get your Uber ride with a phone call. Call 0800 722 000 to ride.
Top Sport ndo mwanzo tu.
So much football.
It is a chance to enjoy Kenyan football.
Crunch time for the Kenya Sevens rugby team. Why Formula 1?
I'm interested in cars.
The speeds that those cars attain is crazy. But I'm supposed to be a fan.
Asante sana Kigogo. Karibu, sijapata vizuri sana. Lugha gani hiyo ya Kimayai? But good to see you there.
for children, all leukemia is highly curable because children are still growing, so the cells regenerate faster. So Zuri is very light skinned, but then she grew really, really pale. But then she began exhibiting very specific symptoms that are now linked to early onset of cancer. You know, as a dad, you grow up knowing you can do anything for your child, but a cancer diagnosis takes that away from you in a second. It's difficult to really explain it. Like, all you can do is just cry.
Welcome to Turkana University College. Turkana University is a center of research, innovation, and technological development. Apply now for our January, May, and September intakes. Turkana University, the cradle of knowledge.
The DCI this week announced that anyone found guilty of mistreating chicken could end up in jail for up to 6 months. It's not clear whether this directive was inspired by this picture of a boda boda guy ferrying chicken or last week's incident between rapper Barack Jacuzzi and one of his chicks.
So koti inabudi kunyongele kwa ajili ya huru. Nilimwambia Yona, thank you. Nikatoa thao nikapatia askari. Alikuwa hapo kando nikamwambia afanye.
Hiyo si ni makosa ingine?
Nilimwambia tafadhali chukua 1000 niletee chakula, sijai kula maisha yangu.
Akaniuliza gani nikamwambia.
The Federation of Kenya Employers, FKE, invites you to the 3rd Employer of the Year Awards, EYA, and Gala Dinner at the Radisson Blu, Upper Hill, Nairobi on Friday, 20th September 2019 from 6 p.m.
The second phase of the InterSwitch Spark competition has just been completed. The qualifying test determined the best 54 students who will proceed to the next round of the InterSwitch Spark National Science Competition to be aired on NTV. Overall, 1,498 students from across the country registered for the competition, with secondary schools in the Rift Valley registering the highest number of students at 372. The competition has reignited the interest in STEM subjects across the country. InterSwitch Spark National Science Competition will award the winner a scholarship worth 1.5 million shillings, a laptop, signage for their school, while the first and second runners-up will get cash and laptops. Who will be crowned winner at the end of it all? Come with us on this exciting ride. Powered by InterSwitch, transaction solutions you can depend on.
Welcome back. You're watching the Leadership Forum here on AM Live. Today's subject is leadership and the trust quotient. We've heard from three of our panelists. Right now we have Tufosa Kwaka, who is a principal of St. Paul's University Nairobi campus, and she is going also to give us her views on the trust quotient, that is the leadership and the trust quotient. Tufi, you have 5 minutes beginning now.
Thank you. And good morning again. You know, my fellow panelists have just really started it really well, and they've said a lot that there is to be said. Dr. Mwenja ended on a note about leadership, and I want to pick it up from there by just quoting John Maxwell, who said that trust is the currency of leadership. Trust is the currency of leadership. In other words, for you as a leader, you use trust to be able to increase your influence, or you use trust to decrease your influence. And you know, stepping back a little bit from leadership, trust is so important. Do you know that one of the most important ingredients in child development is trust? A child, from the time they are born, the one thing they thrive on is, can I trust you? So when as a child begins to suckle, the thing that they are developing with their mother is trust. And that is why, from I think about 9 months, because the child has established that bond of trust, they begin to refuse any other person who has not appeared in their world, who has given them trust. Trust is important. In fact, psychologists also say that colors convey trust. Did you know that? Mm-hmm. That's why people rebrand, companies rebrand, and they begin to choose other colors. Why? Because of this critical currency, and we are calling it trust. On Dr. Mwenje's list, he talked about 8 C's. I want to add one more. And this one is caution. Caution. Trust is important, and it is the currency you should have, but also as a leader, you must have it in caution. In other words, you must be cautious, because you cannot just trust everybody and anything. You must be able to use that currency, but use it where you get the highest return. Yesterday, or the other day, at about 6:45 a.m., I went to deposit some money into my phone. And immediately I reached to the counter. As I was just starting to be served, 2 men with rucksacks came on each side of me. And immediately my antennas went up. Why? Because I said something is not right. Why would 2 men with rucksacks come on, one on my right, one on my left? So I got very uneasy, and I looked at the teller, hoping that she would say, you know, Q or something. She didn't. And I wondered, are they in cahoots? In other words, my caution came up. So I eventually just said, look, gentlemen, it's not very nice to come on each side of a lady. It makes me feel very uncomfortable. Kindly queue, you know. And, you know, they looked at me all shocked, you know. But it was because I was being cautious. They didn't intend any harm. I mean, I did my transaction and walked away. I hope I left the teller okay. But it's because of that element. Let me talk about it now when we go back to the quotient. And Mike talked about the fact that we look at the consequences, and it's the consequences that are measurable. Let me say something, 2 things. One is that when we have, as a leader, when we are relating to people, people come into that relationship with a psychological contract. It is never written, but it is always implied. So when, for example, I'm applying to work at whichever organization and I get the job, psychologically, I am hoping that my employer, my supervisor will be the best they can ever be, and they will give me a place to thrive. So there's a psychological element to it. Now let me say why that is important. Therefore, as I come into that relationship, I have an expectation. But it's the same thing when I am employing. I'm hoping that the person I'm employing will actually meet the needs that I have. So I'm accepting them based on this currency called trust. So what are we each expecting? We are all expecting a return on our investment. And our investment is trust. Therefore, now to use in accounting, we talk about the double entry rule. The double entry rule, what does it say? That for every entry in one account, there will be an opposite entry in another account. So as a leader, whenever you hold yourself, and we've already shared what some of those things are, character, consistency. Mary talked about patterns. The fact that whatever you do, there is a pattern to it. Anytime you do those things, you are either debiting or crediting. Meaning that whatever I do is either increasing my trust or it is decreasing my trust. When it is decreased, it means whereas I may still have a little bit in that account with that person, it is, if I keep on doing that which diminishes it, they begin to trust me less. But when I do something that increases them, they begin to trust me more. And as they trust me more, I can therefore even increase some of the askings or the asks I can have on them. So I can begin to ask things that normally somebody would say no. Why? Based on trust. So I need to build that particular trust. So as we have this discussion, I want us to think about trust, therefore, as currency. And that as we give each other and as we exchange, or the mode of our exchange in our relationships, any relationship, a parent and a child, you know. One of the things my son, for example, would remind me, or my daughter, is, Mommy, will you keep your promise? That question of promise is a question of trust. Can I trust you? Between spouses, can I trust you? Let's think about our political space. Unfortunately, in this country, we have been made to believe about trusting people based on their ethnicity. So, because somebody is from a particular part of the country, we have been made to believe that that part of the country cannot be trusted. But that's a wrong view, because in every community, there are good people and there are really bad people. It is never based on color. Let me say, it's not even based on religion. It's not even based on ethnicity. As a leader, remember, trust is your currency. Increase your rate of return. Thank you.
Right, increase your rate of return. Trust is your currency. That is what True Fossa is saying this morning. Also, colors can convey trust as well. And caution. Caution, you need to be cautious as well when it comes to trust. So we want to just buckle down to a discussion and pick out some of the salient points that were raised here. And some of them really cut across, Mike, like this issue of smart trust. I think this is where also we have Trufi saying that you need to be cautious as well. And we had also all these, should I say, hallmarks of trust that were laid out also by Mary and also Professor Dominic Mwenja. But let's just begin with a smart trust, and then we can try and sort of extrapolate what we are talking about and put it in the space of Kenya, where we are looking at the political space or sphere, the relationship as well, and try and see, is the issue of trust. I remember 3 years back, just on this forum, we were discussing about the electoral system here in the country. And we had one gentleman from IBC who is elect Chris Musando. And we wanted to know what is the integrity of the electoral system in this country, because we don't have, one, clarity as far as you know, the whole process is concerned. And he was very sanguine about the whole system, you know, the way it is intact. And he raised one pivotal issue, that the problem with Kenyans, and I had mentioned earlier, and this also was picked up from another forum, when we began the program, we discussed about this with you, Mike Eldon, that people are raising the issue of Kenyans trusting one another. And he said, I can remember clearly, that the issue with Kenyans is all about trust. We don't trust our institutions, we don't trust our electoral systems, only for him to disappear that night. And then he was found murdered, you know, the following week. So the issue of trust is still big, and I can see when we're talking about trust, we still grapple. We don't trust our institutions, we don't trust our politicians, we don't trust our leaders, we don't trust our neighbors. We have burglar proof doors, we have periphery walls, you know, scaling the heights. We don't trust one another compared to other countries where we just have picket fences, right? But when it comes to smart trust, what do we mean? That you have to be smart about also who you trust, Mike?
Yeah, these are all good points. I remember 3 years ago, as KEPSA, we met with the commissioners of IEBC and the senior management, and they told very good stories about how the system was trustworthy. Well, who knows? The fact of the matter is that when we trust that people abide by the rule of law, and I'm quoting here a chap called Ruud van Hoven, who manages the World Database of Happiness in Rotterdam. And I was referring before to the relationship between happiness and trust. He wrote, "The quality of the society is more important than your place in that society. If that society abides by the rule of law, then its people are willing to hold back from irresponsible behavior because they trust that fairness and respect will prevail, even for the poor." So the question here in this country is that even when there is the rule of law, we can't believe that it is. And so we don't trust. It's not even guilty until you are proved innocent. It's guilty irrespective of whether you are guilty or not. Trust has got so low. And it's very few spokespersons, representatives of the elite of the establishment, who are able to speak with credibility with Mwenja's 7 C's that lead us to practice the 8th C and be so cautious that we are too cautious. And that's why you need to be smart, smart trusting. I think that we go too far. And obviously, as I said, it's the media that leads us to mistrust more than we should, because it deliberately selects the negative.
So you talked about the trust is a hard economy? Trust as a hard economy? As a hard economy?
Oh, as a hard, yeah. As a hard factor, not a soft factor. And so the speed of trust, where you don't need such long contracts and stuff, where 2 politicians can get together and shake hands because of trust, that took 3 seconds, didn't it?
Okay, open and effective communication. You wanted to add something, Mary?
I wanted to add something, because you raised a very good question about the whole thing of underpinning trust, in the way we work, deal with each other in politics, in the electoral system. And I think that underpinning the whole question of trust is a question of character, is what we're saying, of consistency, reliability, predictability, and so on. So when you don't have that character that allows people to trust you, that you're consistent, there's a value that underpinning you, then people don't trust it. And why don't people not trust it? Because what you were going to say about being open. If you have a system that's open, that's transparent, whether it's about a leader or a system, elections need to be open, transparency, then people will have trust. If tendering is open and transparency, which is why the government is, wants to go into open government, open dialogue, you can see all the vendors, you can see all the analysis, then people trust it.
But even if it is open,
yes,
people's perception can still be that you say it's open, but there's still stuff going on behind the scenes.
Because historically, they've not had that. So trying to build it in open, in small little steps, and this is where we talk about transparency, and that's why Transparency International talks about really having open communication, which sometimes we're not very good at, even as parents, government. They're not open. These things BBI, which I always forget what it's about. What is the whole framework? What is it about? What are the underpinning, being open and transparency? What is it supposed to achieve? So, and then the other one, which is so important, leading by example. As I said, leaders are the ones with the owners, those in leadership roles, to lead by example. So you have people telling people, work hard, do this, blah, 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 life will be good, but yourself on your end, you're profiting from so much corruption. I was shocked to read, was it 2-3 months ago? Leaders in parliament, some of them were leaders of opposition or leaders of government business, being quoted in huge tenders of billions. How are you leading by example? So people say, you say this, but we see this. So you don't lead by example, I won't trust you.
Preaching water, drinking wine.
Exactly, preaching water, drinking wine. And that is a reason why people will not trust you, because you say the reason to success is work hard, read hard, go to university, get a good job. But what do you do?
Yes.
Sorry.
Just a moment, because you raised also an important question, and we want just maybe to hover a bit around the clarity also of the BBI. Looking at today's editorial cartoon also from the People Daily, you can see, you say the media also try and spew mistrust. Mike Eldon, this is one of our cartoonists as well. This is the politicians and the ostriches laying these eggs. Of course, the big ones is all about BBI. We can see a woman there with a pail in hand, and then he's saying the eggs are mine. You talked of clarity and ambiguity, and I think this is what has actually fed also into negativity about people embracing all these issues to do with the referendum, the BBI, the politicians, also the toying and throwing on the same things. We don't have people who have one collective view about the BBI as it is. You're still wondering. this is Mary. What is the intent of the BBI?
No,
What are the contracts around it? You know, what is the agreement? I want to just, because Dominic, you're the one who raised it before, there's no effective communication about it. We don't understand where it is headed to.
And just to interject very quickly before Dominic comes in, one of the, leadership behaviors that build team trust, which you say Kenya team trust, is that you put the success of the team before your own. That is one of the key things that Kenyans have a lack of trust, because is it about the team success or is it individual success? Professor.
Now let me put on my professorial hat.
Yes, please.
And talk strategy a little bit. Now, in any organization or any group of organized thing like BBI and all those things, there is what we call structural integrity of anything that you put together. Now, the reason why structural integrity is attacked by individuals is because they want to look at the structural weaknesses within the structure to create what we call structural holes. And within those structural holes, they introduce ambiguity. And in ambiguity, there is opportunity. And that's why when you go to, let's say for government services, and you know your file is over there, somebody will tell you, we cannot find your file. And you know structurally it's supposed to be there. So what they do is they impugn on the structural integrity of an organization in order to create structural holes, to create opportunities for two things, or actually three things. One, fraud. Two, extortion, where they tell you now, if you want me to do this, you have to get something.
That's why they resist automation.
Absolutely. And because automation improves structural integrity.
You can't lose a file.
You can't. So without structural integrity, those opportunities for corruption and the other bad things are not there. And that's why you find even in these national initiatives, when there is lack of clarity, there is ambiguity, and therefore there are opportunities to do things you normally would not use because people are going to question. And that's where we are with a lot of these things. Now, let me go back to the issue of trust in our leaders. And people have been texting me to say, I just came on just when you are leaving, and I missed 2 C's. So very quickly, let me go through the 8 C's so that those who didn't get it, we are able to get it. The first C is clarity.
Yes.
The second C is compassion. The third C is character. The fourth C is contribution. The fifth C is connection. The sixth C is commitment. The seventh C is consistency. The eighth C is competency. And with my sister here, the ninth C is caution. And I can tell you, when you look at that spread of all those C's, you look at individuals, you start to realize this person behaves this way, but is not consistent in this way. His character is not supporting what he is saying. And therefore, the trust quotient started to lower, and lower. And I remember I said, as the trust quotient lowers, leaders tend to grab power. If you look at leaders, even in corporate.
And enforce trust.
Absolutely, and enforce trust that they have not earned. And if you look even in corporate.
Yes.
The leaders who do not have character and compassion and all this, they are the dictators in the corporate entity. They are not your normal CEO that you would walk to, have a conversation with. Let me tell you what I did that when I became CEO at Mata. One of the things, I eat my lunch with my staff at the cafeteria. And I remember one of my staff come in and tell me, this is the first time, I've been here 34 years, this is the first time that I'm seeing a CEO eat with us in the cafeteria. That tells you a lot.
I can attest to that. I've eaten the lunch
You have
with you and some of the staff. That's true.
The lunch with that. So, and that's why trust is earned.
Yes.
It is not an event. And therefore, it has to be practiced over and over and over. And you have to, you see, if you don't invest in a relationship with your staff, with the people that you're leading, then that investment that you don't take will cost you in terms of productivity, in terms of theft, in terms, there are people who will be willing to do bad things and they're tempted to do bad things and say, you know what, I can't do this. I like the CEO, I like my boss, I have an opportunity to do bad things, but I can't do this. Because they have that trust. So the leaders have to have that utu in them, so they're able to connect with all staff at all levels.
Trophy, you wanted to say something before we move on, so that I can ask you also my question. Yeah, you wanted. I hope you've not lost your track of thought.
No. I was coming into the BBI issue.
Yes, please.
I think that
Please,
the problem about some of these things is that also when we look at them, what we are seeing are wolves in sheep's clothing. And the problem is, like as Mary said, it's what we have seen in the past consistently being done by the same has not conveyed to us that they can be trusted. If I add another C, is confession.
Confession.
Confession. Why? Because as human beings, we will always have moments where we will break trust. None of us is perfect and consistent 100%. What we have a problem with is where somebody breaks it all the time, or most of the time. But all of us, even the best of people, there'll be one time or another, you will do something that conveys not trust, but reduces your trust currency, the value. What should you do at that time? You should confess. Meaning you should come back and say, I was wrong on this issue.
And that's the aspect of vulnerability.
And that's the aspect of vulnerability.
Yes.
Because when you do that, what you're saying to people, like Dr. is saying, is that I'm human, I recognize it, but I can do better, and I'm striving to do better. Which also means that as a leader, when you're leading, people can identify with you. The problem is, a lot of leaders put themselves on a pedestal.
Yes.
Even, I'm just imagining, for example, you can go to church, but sometimes the way the pastor has preached, with all due respect, you think, will I ever make it? But there is a way in which you can connect with people, and confession in leadership helps to make that connection.
Right. Before you, Prof, Mike, on the BBI, we'll come to you.
Quickly on BBI, I'm an agnostic there, because the optimistic scenario is that they're deliberately doing things quietly behind the scene, not communicating in public, gathering their stuff, maturely, calmly assessing so that they can come up with their report. On the basis that these were credible people, trustworthy people who were selected from different sides of politics and so forth to bring conclusions that resonates with their C's. And I speak about this because I relate it to KEPSA, where most of what we do quietly. And therefore, as I've said before, I think on this show, many people think we're doing nothing. Many people think BBI are doing nothing. Have you really been to the counties, etc.? So I'd like to think we should be trusting enough to not rush to judgment about them. I'm not.
I think that when it comes to public policy, it's very different from lobbying, advocating efforts, organization. Public policy is a whole bigger debate, and it's about stakeholder participation,
public participation,
management of expectations and transparency. Because you can, with all good intentions, be wanting to do something, but the perceptions will completely destroy a very good initiative. So, and I learned this when I was in the oil industry and we were looking at doing a number of things offshore and whatever. It's so necessary to engage people from the beginning and have that active stakeholder participation, because if you don't, you will have a completely different storybook from the reality, and bridging that gap becomes very, very difficult.
Right. Prof.
Going back to what my sister was saying here, most of our political leaders, I would say they have a personality conflict. and the personality conflict is the fight between the ego and the superego. Because the ego is telling you to be rational. Okay, be honest and just speak what you believe you speak. Speak it out, let's hear. This is the right thing to do. But your superego is telling you, but you are mheshimiwa. You have to be seen to be strong. And for you to be seen to be strong, you have to be controversial. You have to say these things that you actually privately do not believe. And that is what I call the approach avoidance conflict. You want to approach a certain topic or a certain discussion in a certain way that's rational. But the irrationality of the ego forces you to be irrational, and therefore you end up saying things that you actually personally do not believe.
Because otherwise you won't succeed.
Absolutely. And that's a problem. I think I had a discussion somewhere with somebody else, and they said, you know, for you to succeed in politics in this country, you have to inherently be dishonest. Because honesty,
in any country,
actually any country. I look at my former president, Trump. Whatever he says today, tomorrow he contradicts himself. Look at UK. You have Johnson. I was watching a clip where he was being confronted by individuals on the street on the issue of Brexit, and they were telling me, "You are lying, Mr. Prime Minister, because what you believe is not what you're saying." That's the conflict that I'm talking about between the ego
Trump
and the
has lied
super ego.
2,000 times.
But I think it's even
Trump
worse.
lies just about every day. Let me tell you, the culture of trust is extremely important. When I came back to this country, I was very trustful. I trusted everybody. Within the first few months, I was conned millions of shillings because I trusted people that I was dealing with. Then I came later to learn a very simple thing that says, trust but verify. When somebody tells you something, you trust them, but then you have to verify what they're trying to say. That's why I say trust is earned, it's not an event.
Debarl, I think
That's why they always say, trust in God, but tie your camel.
Yes, yes. But I think what Professor is talking about, the politicians, then it's even worse than, you know, that, because you're talking about the ego and the super ego. I come from a school of thought that says no ego, because I think the ego is part of the huge problem in humanity. And laying down your ego, because it's not about I, it's about we, the Utu. It's about that team and where you're going. And I think you're right, but you probably didn't think of it that way, that if you come from lay your ego down, and then you're coming to ego and super ego, no wonder we have all these problems in
that's
terms
where
of political leadership.
humility comes
Absolutely.
in. Because we call upon our leaders to have humility, empathy, all those things that make you human. And that's why I tell people sometimes when during the campaigns, when you're close to your politicians and they're going through, once they go in and they stop picking your phone calls, don't worry. Because that is the process of getting to power. They have to use others in order for you to get to where you want to go. Now, our people sometimes, and that's why mistrust that comes in, when you look at this person and you say, this person is a wonderful person, I'm going to die with this person, and then the moment they reach where they're supposed to reach, then they all forget about you and all your friends and all the things that you're doing, because power sometimes corrupts.
Power corrupts. You talked of cognitive and affective trust that we'll come back to, and I just want to also just move on, because you raise the concept of confession, vulnerability. It reminds me of Starbucks when we had this ugly racial incident that was, and then we had a viral video clip that went, you know, on social media as well, and we had the CEO really coming to the fore to confess and apologize to the public. He said all companies make mistakes. This is CEO Kevin Johnson. Great companies learn from them and improve. That's exactly what we plan to do. And of course, we know the company reported solid results for the quarter ending that particular month. This incident somehow didn't really affect their bottom line, but they went full steam ahead to actually try and have training for their staff for racial bias
in each branch.
In each branch of the country.
In fact, they shut down all
They shut down all of this.
For a day,
but we saw an aspect of confession. For me, I really found this was now leadership, right? Epitome of leadership in a crisis, where we have a CEO really coming to apologize and saying we're learning from this, we'll take also remedial measures to try and see that we improve on this. When we talk about confessions, we don't see it in this country as much. People will actually not really even come to the fore. And this is the ambiguity, because we leave people to, you know, throw all manner of speculations about How critical is it for a leader, without you feeling that you're vulnerable, that you're showing weakness? In fact, that will be even a launching pad for the strength that you will show as a leader.
Trump in Alabama is the obvious one. He's not confessed that he got it wrong with the threat of the tornado.
Well, the tornado, yeah, it's true. Right?
I deal with students in the university.
Yes.
And sometimes at the university, the impression we give our students is that they've got to be A students and that we were A students. And I've had so many people say, you know, in fact, I had a discussion, I think, with my daughter or my niece the other day, and I was saying about my own schooling experience. I wasn't an A student. And I remember she told me, I've never known that. And so I was trying to encourage her in her own experience to say, you can actually overcome, you can actually become better. Not all of us arrived. You know, that's basically what I was trying to say, and to encourage her through her schooling.
Yes.
And I think it is so critical. It is such an important thing, because what does that do? Going back to my use of currency,
yes,
it increases the value of your currency. It actually does. You know, in this country, what we've made it look like, it is a weakness. Yes. And that it is a failure from which you can never recover. And therefore, what do us as leaders, what do we try to do? We try to ensure that even though we fail, we cover it. And therefore, like I said, we therefore lift ourselves and put ourselves in a pedestal. Therefore, what do people feel? You're too far up, I can never reach. Therefore, because I'm down here, yes, I will keep doing what I'm doing, because really, I can never be like you. But that's not the reality. The converse is true. If you use your currency well, one of the ways you increase the value and therefore the return on investment that people have placed in you is by you increasing your trust. How do you do it? By actually being vulnerable, saying, here we were wrong, we need to make it right, and we are going to make it right this way. And then when you say we are going to make it right this way, you demonstrate it. Because remember, leadership is influence, and one of the way you influence is by role modeling, is actually show you have changed your ways. Part of the reason why we are struggling as a nation is because even though we've had different governments in place, even though we have different governments in the county and in the parliaments, the problem is all of them behave the same. Even where someone comes and says, we are taking you to Canaan, or whatever other analogy we use. The problem is all those Canaans seem to be the same, and they don't look like Canaan. And it is because at the point somebody's confessed and said, we are now changing, we have not seen the change. Confession is important, but actually acting in line with that confession is even more powerful. So that in the Starbucks case, why did their turnover increase and improve? Exactly, exactly. It is because they then went ahead, shut down, trained all their staff, and began to observe and evaluate and assess whether that training had impact.
Yes.
And because it had impact, although they had lost something, they gained more. Why? Because they conveyed that you can trust us.
Confession. Yeah, Prof, you have something to say?
I was going to add on the same one. In terms of taking responsibility for the consequences of your action as a leader, it shows humility. I remember back in the States when Tylenol by Johnson & Johnson, Tylenol is a very commonly used painkiller. There were tablets that were contaminated, and they were actually getting people very sick. But when the CEO learned that was happening, the next action was to order the entire withdrawal of the product from every shelf across the entire country until they figured out where the problem was. Now, what that did, by the time they came back a few days later and said, now we have looked, we have identified where the problem was, these are the serial numbers that they had problems, and all these have been taken out. The dominance in the market continued at that time for Tylenol. And therefore, the issue of taking responsibility and coming out and confessing and says, here I was wrong, I am human, I need your forgiveness. I remember not too long ago, one of the projects that I was leading, but when I went to open the project, because it was late, the first thing I did was to apologize to my staff.
Yes.
It's a contrast to Boeing, isn't it?
Absolutely, because Boeing is a monopoly.
Yes,
it's a monopoly. And that's a problem. The first thing I did was to apologize to my staff, and I told them, I am so sorry. And for those of you who are working here and have been deployed elsewhere from your comfort area, we wasted your time, and we made you travel a little bit further for you to go to work. For that, I take responsibility, and I am sorry. Now, leaders are supposed to have that humility of confessing and saying, when I am wrong, I am wrong. And we are going to make things better from this day moving forward. Unfortunately, the conflict between your ego and superego always tells leaders, you should not appear to be weak. Now, in humility, there is strength. Just like in trustworthiness, there is power.
Thank you. We have Sheila Cheng. She's saying, it is said that people approach relationships with implied psychological contracts. How then can we repair negative psychological contracts that are a result of existing in a cynical society? Any of you, I think, who raised the psychological contract? Is it true for you, Dave?
Yes. I did. And I think that's a good question, because that's part of where we are as a nation. You don't trust anybody or anything, you know. I think what we've just started with is confession. That's a powerful place to start with. It may appear as a place of weakness, but it is actually the greatest strength you have.
Saving grace.
Yes, and it is the place of saying we were wrong. And please forgive me. From now on, we are going to do things differently. That for me would be a starting place. My second one would then to ensure that you're consistent with your confession.
Consistent with your confession.
Yes, because trust is gained over consistency.
Yes.
What we are seeing, are you reinforcing the right message, or is there a discrepancy between what you said and what you're doing?
And maybe to add to that is, I really liked what you said about cognitive trust, which is the technical competency to do what you're supposed to do, and then the affective trust. If you're to even perhaps put those together and pick your point, is to do what you're supposed to do. If you can do what you're supposed to do, people will trust you, because this is my job, I did my job properly. And when I look at our leadership, and even moving to another arm, let's say like the parliament, because we're talking about women leadership, women empowerment, or rather us self-empowering ourselves, because there's a conference coming up for the Kenya Institute of Management next week in Mombasa. And we were talking about the issue of the parliament not obeying its own laws, the constitution of no one gender should have more than 2/3. So, because women can have 2/3 as well. If you don't follow the law, if you don't have a third women in parliament, and the parliament itself as MPs do not do this, how then do you gain that trust? So whether it's in your own job, coming to work at 8 and leave at 5, do what you're supposed to do, your boss will trust you, you will be promoted because you do what you're supposed to do. At the leadership level, if you vote you to do ABC, then do it consistently, people will trust you.
All right. Yes, if we actually may also place them, the cognitive and affective. You see some of them appear on our screens. Cognitively, are they really delivering? Affectively, do you really trust them? Right? So are we also lost on both? Or do we have any that you can see? There's a gumption. Some of them will say, I'm the fair, I have the self pair of hands as well. You can trust me. Right?
Yes.
So do we trust them cognitively or affectively? There is always that sixth sense that you feel that you cannot really explain.
We shouldn't generalize, but we tend to.
We shouldn't generalize, but we tend to.
There are a lot of very technically competent people in government, but the bureaucracy prevents them being impactful.
Absolutely. Very many competent people.
There are a lot of technical people who are technical competently, but don't have the right character. And I mean, there are all the permutations and combinations. And I think our challenge, whether in the public sector or the private sector or anywhere, civil society, you name it, is to judge individuals and not overgeneralize. And there's, everywhere we have the spectrum. And we over-focus on the negative end.
And that's what I call the power of positive thinking.
Of objective thinking.
Absolutely. And
But also you need to hold people to account. If you're every day on positive thinking, I think there's some measure you definitely have. But it's very important, yes, smart trust. It's very important to hold people to account on the things that they don't do, but with respect so that it can be better.
Absolutely. And I was going back to what Mike had said about the rule of law and the respect for the rule of law. And the greatest impact in our society today for everything that we do will be the proper respect and fear of the rule of law. Because the rule of law is what glues a society together. When that collapses, then there's nothing else that glues the society together.
But where there is trust, you don't even need law.
Absolutely, but then you see.
Yes, but it's very
for the rule of law to actually work and build that trust, we have to have trust in two very important members of our society: the law enforcement and the judiciary.
Consequences.
Okay, if those two cannot be trusted, and if those two...
investigation and prosecution.
All of those, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Now, if we cannot trust the police to do a good job to enforce the rule of law, and we cannot trust the judiciary to mete out proper justice for those who break the rule of law, then the society is totally lost. And what we do, we leave it to the politicians who have the microphone to tell us which way the country should be going, whether they have direction or they don't. And that's why you see sometimes, sometimes the loudest sometimes have the least of what is between their ears. And unfortunately, that does happen a lot of times.
Is that the one about the empty debby makes the most noise?
So, yeah. And I'm not saying they're empty debbies. What I'm saying is we give space to people to make noise when they actually should not be making noise. They should be sitting down, contemplating solutions for the society, looking for ways to improve what we do as a country, as a society. And we have very smart politicians. I was looking not too long ago, in terms of their cognitive ability.
Yes.
We have very, very competent politicians. We have lawyers, we have judges, we have professors, we have all these people who are highly educated. So the question then I ask myself is, you have all these very educated and well-rounded individuals. How come the political part of our equation is not working the way it should work?
Thank you.
Then you go to the other side. We have a very well-educated judiciary, very competent judges. Then you ask yourself, why is it not working? Then you go to an investigative authority. That's what I'm saying. They have very good people. We also have some very bad people.
Fantastic. Okay, I just want us, as we're winding up the show, maybe, because we talked about also the trust quotient of the country really going down by the day and declining. How can we be able to salvage this, and which will be the institutions should come together to try and increase the trust quotient? Is it just purely for the leadership, or is it a collective effort? Another thing that I wanted to ask is, you have all these attributes that you've put, clarity, compassion, character, all these attributes, roll them into one. But at the end of the day, for you, maybe on the apex of leadership, you're trying to hire someone, but there's a sixth sense, right? You feel like, something is not really checking with me inside here about this particular gentleman or lady. He seems to, tick all the boxes as far as the qualifications are concerned, but there's a gumption feeling. Where does now gumption, there's that, gut feeling, really add up to this particular trust quotient? Should we also really heavily rely on it? You just feel, okay, all the papers are okay, but
the gut feeling, the sixth sense.
The sixth sense, you can't just really tell, do you go with it, do you fly with it? And then at the end of the day, you'll be like, wow, I'm so glad actually, I followed my sixth sense. This is where we would have been
when
with this gentleman.
When we recruit at a senior level, we typically don't do so as an individual. We have a panel. And so we compare our sixth senses.
You do.
And so we test them, we validate them against the sixth senses of others.
What do you feel about him?
Well, I think that some of it, that sixth sense, is actually not the human body is wonderfully and fearfully made. And there are things that the unconscious mind picks up. And they start forming a pattern, but your conscious mind doesn't quite understand what it is. We call it instinct, gut feel, but there are things you read in a CV, there are little gaps, but they registered. Somebody was giving a point, you tell them, give us an example when you had a conflict and how you know, your biggest conflict and how you're able to resolve it. There are things in the story, because you're listening to many things, you're seeing the body, you're talking to your friend. Those subtle, and a psychologist probably explain it better than I, those kind of things start forming and they don't connect. So your mind is a major supercomputer processing it, and it tells you inconsistency. What it pulls out and flashes for you is points, and that's what the gut feel of everybody. But it's actually based on their behavior, little things you're reading from the person, what they've said, the CV, that are not aligning. And that tells you it's not quite flowing.
But what is they aligning, but you still feel there is something.
In a computer, the more experience you have at doing it, the faster and the more accurate the computer is. Having said that, though, some people are consistently skeptical, cynical, suspicious, untrusting. Some are too gullible, and that's why you need
at least a panel to actually run through a trophy.
Research has shown that we make an impression of somebody within, I think, less than 5 seconds. It's milliseconds.
Yes.
Okay? And how we make that decision is composed of a number of things. Stories you've heard, what you have been told, what you even like or don't like.
What you observe.
What you've observed. So and yet that is what helps you make that decision. So there's a way in which we make trust, or we trust somebody at one point. When you enter, when you go into a room, for example, and you're thinking, so who will I go to? Normally, it is the person who has conveyed to you, I can trust that person. But trust is not just that point. It is also what is involved in the process. So that in the process now, you're making decisions about how they see it, how they even look at you, how they respond to questions, and so on and so forth. So there is a point, but there's also a process involved, and that's then what forms helps you make that judgment on whether you can trust them or not.
Yes, Prof.
Yeah, what I was going to say, you see, I also, like Mike, we interview a lot. And when people come, you form an impression within the first few minutes. That's where does this person have a presence? That's the first thing that you start to look at. But then at the same time, my CRI start to kick in. As you ask questions and you get responses and you ask, who do you emulate? Who do you see as a person? And then you start looking at the character that these people would like to emulate. You start to look at all these things, you're looking for credibility. Is this person credible? Is this person reliable? Does this person have what I would call integrity? And does this person has the utu in him in order for me to trust him?
But what if all this is really filtered through your confirmation bias? Because we have all confirmation biases within us, because of societal contracts that we've really been exposed to.
Diversity in a panel.
Yes.
That's why it's important to have diversity.
Diversity in a panel.
Yeah,
right,
absolutely.
thank you. Maybe we should get our headline remarks as we also look forward to closing the program as well. Just briefly, we begin with you, Mike.
Yes.
Your headline thoughts.
You're asking what can we do to
increase
raise the level of trust.
Yes, as a country.
Which I'm not sure is further declining. I'm not sure that there's that much further one can go, although each low can lead to an unexpected further low. So my thought is back to this win-win. And in so much of what I do as a consultant, and also where I'm a director, never mind as a chairman, I help people negotiate to win-win by exchanging offers and requests. And so I see my role, whether I'm a director or a consultant, it's very, very often, predominantly almost, I would say, as a mediator to help get people to win-win, through which, of course, it implies they have to trust each other more than they had been doing. So building a safe space, a trusting environment where they are genuine and generous about offering something, about remorse of where they didn't do what they said they would do, in order to build their reputation as trustworthy with another trustworthy person to build these high trust subcultures.
Thank you. High trust subcultures.
Yeah.
Mary, your
Yes.
headline thoughts, please.
Yes, I started with a quotation that I do not trust words. I even question actions, but I never doubt patterns. So what I would say is that because truth, trust starts with truth and ends with truth. Everything we're saying is that truth is always consistent. If it's the truth, it is the truth. And if you're vulnerable, if you're open as a leader, if you're transparent with that truth, people will see it. They will then feel you and understand you. That utu will come in. And for me, that is what is so key. Reduce that ego.
Thank you.
Meet people.
Right.
And start with truth, end with truth.
Thank you, Mary. Prof,
thank you, Debarl. I think as a country, we have to start trusting. And I agree with Mike. It doesn't mean that the trust quotient is declining. But the skepticism that we see in the society, we have to start trusting. And we have to do this at an individual level before it becomes a societal level. However, I always remind people it is not a zero-sum game. You don't have to win when another person has lost. The mutual support of each other as individuals creates a trusting environment which makes us all to do better and to get better.
Thank you, Prof. Trophy.
There's a quote that says, don't ask what your country or your nation can do for you, but rather ask what you'll do for your nation. And I think we are in such an important time in this nation where we need to reflect and understand that we are the total sum of our individual decisions. So we therefore need to ensure that our trust or the value of our trust is always increasing. Because remember, when people put trust in us, there is a return that they are expecting. It is psychological. Let's ensure that we are increasing the value of that trust.
Thank you.
Because together then we'll be better.
Thank you. Always a treat having you every morning here on Friday. If you're here, of course, we know we'll have a very engaging discussion. And I want to thank you for your input this morning. I can see also reactions on Twitter. Let me just read one or two as we're winding up. We have Andy Karaba saying, great discussion. I agree with Mike. One way of ending mistrust within our society is to actively report positives and proper behaviors as a norm rather than the exception. I'd rather think that the opposite has been true. Also, we have Kevin Ogola saying, oh, very educative. I'm getting late for work. I have to leave. Or he had, right. He wants also maybe to maintain the trust quotient. So please, Kevin, thank you so much. Also, Sheila Cheng, he says, if you consider systems thinking, the trust quotient has a domino effect on the outcomes of every activity, and all activities are interconnected. We have also Waziri. He says, I admire the punchline or the punchlines of Tufosa. I get challenged a lot whenever I listen to her. Right there goes your fan Waziri there. I don't know if it's the real Waziri. Nyamogo Gogni saying leadership is best described as a servant leadership. And lastly, Governor the Dreamer says, if your actions inspires others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. You've been watching the Leadership Forum here. Let's continue having this particular, of course, discourse as a country. How can we also improve our country's trust quotient, from our institutions, of course, from also the executive, from the parliamentary, the judiciary. These are different facets of our society. Thank you very much for your valid company. I am Debarl Inea.
I used to see myself different from others.
It really tortured me at first because it was this big name and you're like, hey, you have cancer and you're like, oh, no way.
We actually removed her eye and then we put something we call an implant, and over the implant we put a prosthesis. Parents seeing and watching their child lose an eye is not an easy thing.
They called me names like kona macho ya mbuzi, usinikaribie, ona huyu utatuambukiza.
Welcome to Turkana University College. Turkana University is a center of research, innovation, and technological development. Apply now for our January, May, and September intakes. Turkana University, the cradle of knowledge.
How well does the business world know about your business? You take care of that when you participate in the Kenya Top 100 Mid-Sized Companies Survey and stand to benefit from an industry benchmarking report, opportunities to network with peers and recognition for innovation, corporate, social responsibility and sustainable environment practices. The Business Daily and KPMG recognizes the top 100 mid-sized companies every year for their achievements in business, allowing many to take their seat among the great. Participate today.
Oh, and you're so cute, Baba. I'm your favorite auntie, I know already. Edikala, nachukua, lakini mapua. Jinsi zangu nilipenda kusema, umtoi, rangi peke yake ndio ya mamake. Everything else, macho, mapua, mdomo, ulimi, Baha.
From now onwards, Bahati and bodyguard. Security men, at least 6 of them. 2 armed. Inafaa kuwe na convoy 3 ya V8. Kila mtu akuwe amevaa official. Convoy ya gari ngapi?
Welcome to Turkana University College. Turkana University is a center of research, innovation, and technological development. Apply now for our January, May, and September intakes. Turkana University, the cradle of knowledge.
NTV continues to bring you great entertainment, news, and sports shows. Stay tuned to NTV. For free-to-air set-top boxes and digital TVs, please ensure your aerial is pointed for optimum picture. Then, rescan your set-top box to refresh the channels. When search is complete, scroll until you find your favorite channel under the name NTV or ADN NTV. Choose channel 91 on GoTV, 271 on DSTV, 106 on StarTimes, 13 on Zuku, and we're also on Signet. NTV, turning on your world.
Narok, are you ready? For the first time, Churchill Show live recording comes to Narok. Saturday, 14th September at the Narok Stadium. Joe to Cheke Pamoja. Featuring all your favorite Churchill Show comedians, backed up by local entertainers and hosted by Churchill. Get your advance tickets now at 1,000 shillings because at the gate it will be 2,000 bob. Students limited offer 500 shillings. Get your advance tickets by dialing *229*29# or *483*82# or buy one at the Naivers Supermarket, Narok. Churchill Show Narok for the first time Saturday, 14th September at the Narok Stadium. Ukikosa utaambia nini watu?
Excuse me, miss.
This week on The Trend.
So, but you can call me pins and get you, I'm a baby. I'm Samia. Ikanepa mimi ni ya.
Hey, vipi de, unajua bila Yesu ni tikide. Ai, kumbe,
Siko club niko pale kanisani. Na pia nimekuja na dirani.
This and many more, only on The Trend.
The Trend in association with Geisha.
You are just in time. The live link will be done by Muledan, and sports has a lot to be shown. And Sean Cardovillis,
keeping you up to date with all you need to know as and when it happens.
It's not been a very good morning in the country. We've had a very grisly accident.
NTV, turning on your world.
Good morning, good people. Welcome to Living with S. I'm your host, Sharon Mundia, and we are at Power 254. I know it's only 8 a.m., but we're about to start your day with the kind of pump and zeal that you need, given that the weekend is here pretty much. And I've got just the person to start us off. That is DJ B, who's on the decks and is going to give us a quick performance. What is it called? What is that? What is Scratching. Scratching. All right. And then for 5 minutes, we're just going to jam. So take it away, DJ B.